The first step to creating the article layout is to find an article to actually work with. I found this one from The Guardian, and you just want to make sure that you have enough text to fill up an entire interior spread. Remember, it can be as long as you want because we don't have to lay out all the text. You're just going to put as much text as can fit in that first interior spread and the introduction spread. But it does need to be, a good amount in length. And I like to, stress that you don't have to use the images from the actual article. In fact, I'd rather you find separate images so that we can really reinvent this article and make it your own. So I don't want to just simply take the article with all the styling that's already built in, because we're really just using the article as a source of text. So, we could use filler text, but I think the real article text looks a little bit more real. The filler text can be really distracting. So just go ahead and pull the text into a Word document, just like I've done here. Make sure to preserve the title, although we'll have the option of changing this title to whatever you want, because this is your magazine, and sometimes switching the title around can really help create that relationship between the image and the title. So up to you whether you want to keep the title the way it is, or change the title or slightly alter the title in some way to give yourself a little bit more creative control on how it's executed. And we also need the byline, the person that wrote the article. Sometimes there's a few different people included in the byline. There might be a couple different authors, and then sometimes also a credit for the photographer or the illustrator or anyone else that was involved. And then the actual text itself. So just go ahead and copy that so that we have all the text ready to go. I've removed all the images and the extra line breaks so that the text is a little bit more clean and ready to be worked with. Okay, so let's close that and go into InDesign. We're going to create a new document. And we're going to be working with the same format that we worked with in the magazine cover. So I'm going to go ahead and switch our preset to print. Then I'm going to change our unit of measurement to inches. And I'm going to go to 8.25 inches in width and 10.75 inches in height. Magazines can come in different sizes, but we're just going to work with that same size we worked with last time. And then we have the facing pages checked. This is really important since we're working with a bound document. We're going to have those facing pages. And then down here where it says columns, let's go ahead and increase that to 6. We're going to be working with a 12 column grid. So if we have 6 columns per page, it's actually going to be 12 columns once it spans both pages. Column gutter, I'm going to increase that to 0.25 inches, but up to you what you want to have that number at. Remember that you can always change this later, so don't feel like whatever you choose in this dialog is something you have to stick with. For margins, I'm going to increase that just a bit. I'm going to go up to 0.75. And then let's put in a little bit of a bleed. Again, 0.125 inches is 1/8 inch. That's the standard for bleeds for most print projects. Okay, that looks good. We can add more pages in later if we need to. All right, so here's our document. I'm going to go ahead and look at our pages panel. You can see that we have our A master, which is where we're going to want to put our folio information. And then let's add a few new pages. And you can see when you're working with facing pages that it always gives you this leading page. And it doesn't really allow you to add a second facing page to that leading page. This is because, this is the way most print documents are done. But since we're really starting with, a full spread for the article introduction and then a full spread for the article interior, we don't really want this leading page. So one little trick that you can do is right click or control click on that page. Okay, and then go down and uncheck allow document pages to shuffle. Okay, that's something that the InDesign has checked by default to just help you out and keep your pages organized. But if you uncheck it, you're going to be able to have a little bit more control over like how these pages are oriented. You can do things like that, or move this over and create spreads or individual pages. So that's going to help you kind of accomplish exactly what we want in this case. So let's go ahead and organize that into 2 separate spreads so that we have the right format that we want for our magazine layout. Okay, we can also right click on this and go down to number and section options. So another thing I want you to do, let's bring that dialog that pops up over. And this gives you some options as to how the numbering in your magazine works. So for one, you can, choose the start page numbering at and change that to something other than 1. Usually you do want that at 1, but since we're working with a magazine, we don't really want the first page to be 1, the second page to be 2, because we're trying to pretend that this is kind of the middle of a magazine. So let's go ahead and change that numbering to something random. I'll just make it 56. Okay, you also have a little bit of control over the style of the page numbering as well. So if you want your page numbers to be expressed with a 0 first or 2 zeros to be a 3-digit page number, you can do that as well. I'm going to change it to a 3-digit. I think that's going to look a little bit more interesting, but this is totally up to you. The standard is to just have the regular style. Okay, and then when I click OK, you'll see that now the page number starts at 056 and goes to 059. So that's just the way that that page numbering is going to work from this document on forward. Okay, so for our feature start, we're definitely going to need some sort of image. We're definitely going to have to work with our title. Okay, so let me bring our Word document back in, and let's grab our title. I'm going to copy that, and I'll copy that into a text box so it's ready to go. So we have our title. I'm just going to pull that off to the side for now so that we have it. And then we also need the byline. So again, I'm going to copy in this byline, and I'll put that in a separate text box right there. And then we may also want this first introduction paragraph as well. So it's a little bit of an intro. If you go back to the way the article looks on the internet, this is a bigger type size because it is that sort of introduction style. So that might be something we want to include on the feature start as well. So I'm going to pull that in also. So just copying that, and then just creating a copy of this text box and just pasting that in. Okay, so now we have all the pieces of information we need. I went to Unsplash and pulled in a couple different images here. Okay, and I had this idea of using kind of one of these building shots, and this shot of kind of looking up through a building interior. Thought that this was a cool thing to talk about. The article is about kind of urban living and kind of the pitfalls and the benefits of living in an urban space. So I thought that these could be a really engaging way to show this sort of urban style and kind of the hope of kind of looking up and seeing a path forward for someone living in that type of situation. So a few different options here. I'm going to pull in this one. This one is the one that's capturing my attention. So I'm just going to drag that into the document. Okay, this is going to place the image in, so we can zoom out. And with that loaded on our cursor, we're going to go all the way to the bleeds and sort of drag it out. And I could, make this full page a full bleed style, which I think is what I'm going to do. So let me go ahead and drag that out. I can resize that and get it down to the bleeds. And remember, once I have that image frame adjusted, I can always go in here and move the actual image around by clicking on that little center. Okay, so if I wanted to make this a little larger, I could make it bigger. So remember that this is all about introducing the article. We want to get the text in there in an interesting way, and we want there to be a relationship between the text and the image. So if we do have a full bleed image like this, we need to find some zones where the text can live and be readable. So one thing that comes to mind is putting the text over this dark area. This is a really clean zone. We can definitely put text here in white, and it's going to be pretty readable. Also in this zone, this is definitely a focal point of the image. So it really calls my attention as a place where the title can go and be super effective. Okay, so I think that's where I'm going to put the title. One problem that I'm having right now is currently this image is located right on the split between the two pages. And if you think about the way a magazine works, that's going to be right in that gutter area, and it's going to be a little bit tricky to read any text that crosses over that gutter. So it would be better if the image was more positioned over here or over here so that I could put the text and have it be a little bit more comfortable. Okay, so what I'm going to do is zoom out just a bit, and then let's resize this image and make it bigger so that I can just move that image over. Okay, because I really want it to be kind of on this side. And I don't really quite have enough sort of image zone over there. I could make it bigger and bigger and bigger, but at some point I'm going to lose, I don't know, kind of some of the detail of that image. And I want more of that building to help me give a little more context to the viewer of what we're looking at. So let me shrink this back down, and instead what we're going to do is actually edit the image in Photoshop to get the effect we want. Okay, so let's go over to our links panel. This is one of the great things about using linked images is you can see that linked image is in the image panel, and we can actually edit this image in Photoshop and then have it automatically update with what's happening in InDesign. Okay, so if I select that link, and I can also do that by just selecting it here, and then it'll select that link for me. Okay, and then I'm going to right click and go down to edit with and go down to Photoshop. Okay, I'm going to use the newest version. So when I click that, I'm going to get this spinning wheel. That's because we're actually opening up Photoshop. And there we go. You can see that it's opened up the image in Photoshop for me. Okay, so here it is. And any edits that I make to this image are going to be automatically changed in InDesign. So since that's a linked image, it's referencing this file. And after I save any edits I make to this file, it's going to automatically update. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. I want to add some space over here because, remember, I want to use kind of this as the focal point for the left page. So I need to add a little bit more information for the right page. And one trick that you can do, it doesn't work in all situations, but it works in kind of simple situations like this, is to use what's called the content aware crop. So I'm going to select the crop tool. And usually when you crop, you're kind of cropping in on something. But with content aware checked at the top, you can actually go over and sort of crop out. Okay, so this seems like something that you shouldn't be able to do. But through the magic of content aware, we can sort of uncrop. Okay, when I hit check to confirm that idea, computer is going to think for a while, and it's going to do its best to kind of fill in that information in a smart way that makes sense with the rest of the image. And it's not done a perfect job, but it feels like it's done a convincing enough job that it's not going to be distracting. Okay, let's make a few other adjustments to this. I'm going to go into the camera raw filter and just brighten this up a bit. Okay, I think the shadows can come up just a bit, and let's mess with the color balance just a tiny bit as well. Okay, and I am working destructively here, which is not really the right approach, but for the simplicity of this video, I'm just going to do it that way. Okay, so I'm also going to take a black brush. So brush. Then let's choose a really soft kind of big brush, so hardness at 0%. And again, the hotkey for doing this is to hold down both Control and Option. Okay, and then if I drag over, I can adjust the size of the brush and up down to adjust the hardness of the brush. I'm going to adjust my flow really low, and let's just brush over this area a little bit with black to just darken that a bit more. Because I think that's an area where I'm going to want to put some text as well. So let's just sort of adjust that a little bit. And there we go. Okay, so when I go ahead and save this, or I can just close Photoshop. Okay, if I close Photoshop, when I close it, it's going to ask me whether I want to save that image. Let's go ahead and click Save, and then save it as a JPEG. Okay, and then when I go back to InDesign, you can see that after it loaded a little bit, it adjusted this image. And that's because now we have that new image in here. Okay, and now this image has that extra information sort of built into the side. Okay, so now we're going to be able to position our image where we want to position it. Okay, I want to make sure that that extends to the bleed. And we have that extra kind of area over here where we can put some text. And it's darkened down so that we can put white text over it. So just know that that's a great way to work in InDesign. You can just adjust your images right in Photoshop if they are linked. So that's a really good trick. Okay, so let's go ahead and put in our title. I'm going to go here and grab this piece of text. Right now it's behind the image, so I'm going to hit Shift, Command, and close bracket to bring that on top. You can do the same by going up to Object, Arrange, and Bring to Front. Right now I can't do it because it's already in the front, okay? But that'll bring it in front. Okay, and I think I'm going to shorten this title a little bit. Maybe I'm going to use just How We Live Now instead of the entire thing. And this is, true for a lot of internet articles. They tend to use slightly longer titles. That works a little bit better for the internet, but in print, a lot of times the article titles are much shorter, and they'll go with kind of a main title and a subtitle. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is split this in half, and let's use this second part as the sort of subtitle and this main part as the main title. Okay, so let's kind of bring that down out of the way. And let's choose something really dramatic for this font. Okay, so I'm going to switch it to a let's switch it to a sans serif. I'm going to use Din next, one of my personal favorites. Okay, and let's go up to bold, and maybe we'll choose all caps for this. Okay, and just sort of scale it up. I'm going to increase the tracking a bit as well. And I actually think it'll look really, interesting if all these are on a different line. Okay, so I'm going to work with it in that way. Let's just scale this text up, bring the leading back in just a bit. Okay, there we go. And remember, you can press W to toggle between preview mode and regular mode. Okay, there we go. Let's scale this up just a little bit more. Get that leading exactly where we want it. Okay, and maybe there's even like a cool weight shift we can do. So, maybe we take these characters and actually go down to the regular weight, or maybe even the light weight. We'll go regular. All right, maybe we'll try light. Okay, just to get a really dramatic weight shift between those characters. Okay, so if I position this just right, there we go. So now we have sort of this relationship between the image and the text, and it's really pulling us into that title. Okay, so I think that's working well. Let's get our subtitle going on over here. So I'm going to switch this to Din also. Maybe I'll choose the medium weight for this, and we'll just make that, nice and small. Okay, because that is the subtitle. I don't want it to take over, so that can kind of sit at the bottom there. Okay, so that looks good. Let's work with some color here, because I think the black is almost a, kind of standard choice. I'd like to, see what a little color can do for us. So one thing I can do is, select all this text and use the eyedropper tool to pull a color from the image. So maybe I want to kind of pull this brown kind of caramel color in from that sort of rusty building. Or maybe I want to, create some sort of color. A good thing to do is, to create an actual swatch. So if I select that text and then go up to the top here, I can click to create a new swatch. Okay, and now this is an actual swatch. I can always go in here and redefine it. So maybe we'll try sort of this bright green color. That might be kind of cool for that urban sort of look, sort of a greenish yellow. There we go. I like that. Okay, and then for this secondary text, we could leave it black, or we can change it to the swatch. That's a good thing about having a swatch, is I can change it to that swatch. Okay, and now if I decide that this swatch is too light, and it does look a little bit light, it's kind of hard to read, let's go back and just edit that swatch. Okay, and I can make it just a little bit darker. Okay, and you can see that it'll automatically update that text as we update the swatch. Okay, so that looks good. Okay, a couple other things that we need to include for our article introduction here. One is the byline, and then another one is this sort of introduction text. And remember, it's up to you. You could just include some of the introduction text. You could include nothing and just have the title, or you could actually start the article. So I could bring in a couple paragraphs of the article and put it over in this zone, and that would totally work. Okay, in this case, I think I'm going to keep it simple and just put in this little introduction. So let me bring that into over the image. Again, I'm going to hold down Shift Command and close bracket to bring that in front. And I'm going to change that text to white, which is paper. And the reason it's called paper is because when you're printing white, you're not really putting white ink on top. You're really just not printing in that area because the paper is white. So it's really just that you didn't print anything over these letters, which is going to cause it to appear white. All right. So we do have this grid that we're working with. Okay, remember this is the 6-column grid on each side, which is giving us 12 columns to work with. And it doesn't mean that all of our information has to kind of fit in one column. That would be really constricting. Okay, but it gives us some options about where to put things. So for instance, this sort of intro, I could put it across 2 columns, okay, or I could put it across 4 columns or 3 columns. It just gives us a little bit more control and allows us to keep things just a bit more consistent. And I could do the same for this, although with that title, I'm okay with it kind of living and having it be more related to the image. But it is sort of sitting on that guideline, okay, and this can help me just kind of line everything up. So let me just put all that right on that guideline there. Okay. All right, so let's choose a new font for this. Maybe we'll go back to the DIN, okay, to keep that consistent. And I think I'll go with the lightweight. And I want to make it, a little bit bigger than standard body text, but I don't want it to be huge. So maybe 13 is good. Make sure to always adjust your leading. I'm using 19 for the leading. Okay, and maybe what we'll do is we'll sort of position it and lock it to the bottom of this and kind of align it to that. So I'm going to drag down from my rulers. And if you don't have your rulers showing, you can just hit Command R to hide and show those. Okay, let's drag down from our rulers. We can create a guide. And you can see by default, it only creates the guide on one page, which is not exactly what we want. So if you hold down Command, it'll extend that guide across both pages. So I can put a guide right down at the bottom of our text. Okay, and that'll help us kind of align this text. Let's bring that leading in just a bit. Like that. And I actually think it's a little big. I'm going to go down to 12. Okay, and bring that leading in just a touch. Okay, and then we have a little bit of a widow here. So let's fix that widow by bringing down some words. Or maybe in this case what we'll do is we'll go down to, or maybe I'll go up to 12.5 just to help kind of split that gap and bring one extra word down. And I don't like that little hyphenation that happened there, so I can always go into paragraph and turn off hyphenation. Okay. Okay, so that looks good. Maybe I'll also, add bolding to this first part of the sentence. That could, help create a little bit more texture. So I'm going to make that bold. Okay, so you can see that we have a lot of different things happening in the hierarchy. We have the title, which is of course first on the hierarchy along with that big image. But even within the title, we're highlighting this word now. Okay, and then we have the subtitle, and then we have the intro. But the intro even has a little different, piece of text that's being pulled out to kind of lead us into that. So, some important relationships that are kind of happening there. All right, so that looks good. Let's bring in our byline. Once again, I'm going to bring that in front. And maybe I'll make this the green color. So I'm going to use that same swatch so that it's sort of sitting on top. Okay, and sometimes it's cool to do like some font mixing on this. So for instance, maybe for the name itself, I can create, I can use the DIN. Okay, so DIN next. Maybe I'll use the medium weight for that. And maybe I'll go to all caps for that and just sort of space it out. We don't want the byline to be too big, so I'm going to turn that down a bit. Maybe go to 10 points. Okay, we can kind of track that out. And then for by, we can use a different font. And we're going to want some sort of serif font later on. So I'm going to work with Caslon. Okay, it's a really good font that I like. And let's actually choose the italic weight for that. So I'm going to choose the italic weight. You can see that mixing the italic weight and the sans serif is a little bit more interesting than just making it all the same font. So just something to consider. Maybe I'll even put an extra space in here just to give it a little bit more separation. Okay, there we go. I think I can place that right here, or maybe it kind of comes below. It's another way to do it. Or maybe we bring it up and kind of align it with another line of text. Okay, so maybe I align it with this next word. Okay, just to, again, create a little bit more of a relationship between these two pieces. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. I could definitely go a bit further and refine this, but I like the overall look of what we've achieved here. So this is really what you're looking to do is keep it simple, don't overdo it. Again, that depends on the article and the magazine, your particular style. But you definitely just want to figure out a way to create some sort of relationship between that image and the title. You don't want it to be two separate pieces that aren't interacting. So that's the goal. And look forward to what you guys do with your feature starts.